day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Hypersonic 55 and welcome to another film review, and today's film review will be on the 23rd Bond film, Skyfall. Now I've waited for Skyfall for 4 years after the disappointment that was Quantum of Solace, so we have all been waiting for a good Bond film for quite some time now. And after the problems with MGM's financial issues, I thought this one was going to be made, but obviously we got a good director, we had a solid cast, and the trailers and the video blogs were freaking awesome. So I went to see the film last week, and I can easily say that this is one of the best films of the year. I thought it was awesome, and I'm going to tell you why in this review. So the story in Skyfall goes like this. When Bond is tracking down a bad guy in Istanbul who happens to have a very important item, the mission goes awry when Bond is shot and presumed dead. And in the time that he is away, MI6 headquarters gets attacked, and the information about several undercover agents becomes leaked onto the internet, and they start to get killed. And it is at this point that the government start to question M's powers to go about and handle the situation. Though it is at this point that Bond returns and M sends him on a hunt to go about and track down the bad guy known as Raoul Silva. And as the plot thickens, Bond's loyalty to M is tested to the maximum. And that is the plot synopsis of Skyfall without going into the area of spoilers. I thought the story in the film was really, really good. While it does slow down in the midsection of the film, in the third act, everything just picks up again. There's a lot of drama and a lot of interesting things in the film that I just cannot divulge to you right now because you'd have to watch it to understand. But there is a very interesting link between Raoul, Bond, and M. And it's interesting to see how this connection between them happens to explain itself in the film. There's a lot of revelation to discover in the film, and I love how much danger there was in this film. It was just so good, well done, and yeah, I just love it. I loved it. But what's a good story without a good cast? Luckily, Skyfall has that covered. So let's start with Daniel Craig as the main man himself, James Bond. Now, he's been playing James Bond for the last 3 films now, and this, in my opinion, is probably his best performance ever. In Skyfall, he happens to play Bond in some of his coolest and most emotional moments ever. And it's interesting to see Bond from the perspective of someone that's not as clear-cut as he used to be. Obviously, you happen to see in the trailers that he's a bit rough around the edges and he's been out of the game for a bit. So it's interesting to see him happen to get back into his groove and then try to fight the bad guy when he's not at his best. I thought Daniel Craig was just solid in the film. He seemed to be completely cool and relaxed in the role, and yeah, I can't fault him. He was wicked. Now, let's talk about Javier Bardem as Raoul Silva in the movie. Now, Javier Bardem is a badass in most films that he's in anyway, and when you saw him in No Country for Old Men, you know he's a guy you don't mess around with. And in Skyfall, he is friggin' brilliant. I swear to God, as Raoul Silva, he is literally just one of the most charismatic, most memorable Bond villains I've seen in maybe forever. He just happens to come across as this very evil, intimidated, scary, and strangely sexual man who happens to have this plan of wanting to go about and do all these bad things. And his connection to M is very interesting. And it's also interesting to see the parallels between him and Bond and how similar they are, but also how different they are as well. He is a great villain in this film, and I loved it when he was on screen. Every time he was there, I was like, yes mate, you are the one. So yeah, Javier Bardem as Raoul Silva, mint, he killed it. Now let's talk about Judi Dench as M in the film. Personally, I've never had a problem with M in her previous performances before, but she's never been at the forefront of the story. And in this film, she clearly is. She happens to be at her most vulnerable, and I love what she did in the film. And most people are referring to her as the Bond girl in this film, as opposed to the other 2 women in this film. And it's true, she happens to be the person that's closest to Bond. You see how far that their trust levels go, and with her whole backstory with Raoul as well, there's a whole lot of interesting stuff going on there. It's just interesting to see the connection between M and Daniel Craig just being so good. So I cannot fault it. Judi Dench and Daniel Craig had some great scenes together, and she was awesome. No complaints. And then there was Ralph Fiennes as Gareth Myra in the film. Now, I don't want to say too much about his character, but suffice to say he was pretty darn cool in the movie. Ralph Fiennes is brilliant in everything that he's in, and while he's not in this film as much as I'd hoped he would be, with the material that he was given, he did well in his role. Also, Naomie Harris' Eve in the film was pretty cool as well. I was happy to see that there was actually a Bond girl who could handle herself in the heat of battle, and while a lot of people have said that she doesn't have good chemistry with Daniel Craig, I wouldn't say that. I thought her chemistry was pretty good, just not as good as, say, some of the other, women that Bond has interacted with in some of his other films. And Bérénice Marlohe as Severin, Is that, at least I think that's how you say her name? She was pretty cool. She was totally sexy and classy as the Bond chick in this film, and again, she served her purpose in the movie, though I thought she was going to be in the film a lot more than she was when I ended up watching the film, but for the most part she was good. She just isn't part of the film as much as I thought she'd be. And last but by no means least, there was Ben Whishaw as Q. Obviously, this is a lot younger version of Q than what we're used to seeing in the older Bond films. And I thought that his performance as Q was pretty darn good. He has some nice, interaction with Bond, and there was a lot of, comedic scenes in the film that I found pretty funny. And the way in which he just handled the role, I thought was great, and I could see him being Q for a great amount of time in, the next few Bond films, so no complaints about him, not in the slightest. Now, when it comes to the presentation of Skyfall, I can easily say it is, probably the best aspect of Skyfall, hands down. It is totally good looking, the cinematography is insane, and there are just so many good scenes in this film, from the way the scenes happen in Istanbul to the scenes in London, but when it gets to China, that's when the good stuff happens. There is so much good cinematography, the great use of colour and silhouettes, it's literally insane, it's so good. The look of the film is just so good, it's the best looking Bond film yet, and it's so good. And the soundtrack by Thomas Newman is really good. It's very much different from the sounds that we got with David Arnold in the previous two Bond films, but it works in its own accord. The sound is so much different. There's a lot of use of guitars, but it's so good. I loved the soundtrack in this film. It was totally sweet as hell. Now, it has been said that Skyfall is probably the best Bond film that Daniel Craig has done, and probably one of the best Bond films ever. And to some degree it is. The story is really solid, and there is a great level of drama and emotion that happens to come with this film that hasn't been seen in any other Bond film, in my opinion, for quite some time. And the central connection between Bond, Raoul and M is crucial to the film, and it really is one of the elements that makes it work. This film is really about the characters more so than anything else, and that's one of the elements of Skyfall that really make it work. However, for me, there's just something that I consider just not as good as Casino Royale. For me, Casino Royale will still be my favourite, Bond film of recent years, just because I saw it when it came out. It's still got that nostalgia factor for me, and I still love it. So yeah, I'd say Skyfall is great, but just not as good as Casino Royale in my opinion. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, Skyfall is a great return to form for the Bond series. It happens to have a great level of drama, story, characters, and great cinematography and a great soundtrack. Sam Mendes seems to have brought new life to the Bond franchise, and this is the great film that we needed for Bond's 50th anniversary. I say go out and see it. I'm going to go watch it again, probably about maybe 2 or 3 more times, and yeah, who knows, this may be one of the greatest Bond films in existence long after this film comes out. Anyway, tell me what you thought of the film, give me your comments in the comment section below, and I'll see you on the next film review. So until then, this is Episode 55 signing out.